Welcome back to the Shine Within podcast. Since 1999, Jeannine has dedicated herself to providing insightful healing and guidance across the globe in her roles as an intuitive reader, 5D astrologer, medium, holistic health practitioner, yogi, educator, and author. Her core mission is to assist individuals on their transformative path towards intuitive living, focusing on uncovering past life insights and fostering enduring practices for holistic self-care. Jeannine, thank you so much for being on my show today. I'm already so excited to speak with you. I love your energy. I'm like, oh, I love her. I could give her a virtual huggy.
Oh, thank you, Gina. I feel the same way. I absolutely do. We only had a few minutes to chat, but I was like, oh, there it is. I'm so excited.
Yeah, sometimes you
Thank you
just
for having me.
know.
You do.
And because you're a massage therapist, you're a healer, and so I get it, and like some of the stories you're sharing in some previous podcasts that I was listening to, I was so inspired and moved by your story, and I was like, oh yes, this is the right person I'm talking to. This is it right here. So I just know our listeners going to be so blessed and so excited to hear from you, and I just cannot wait to learn more about you. So thank you so much for being on my show today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. I can't wait to chat as
Of
well.
course. So, can you just share a little bit about your own personal journey and how you transitioned into your role as a mystic and intuitive healer over the past 24 years?
Yeah, well, it didn't start off quite like this, although it did. I was quite intuitive when I was a young girl, but you're just you when you're little, so you don't know until you're out there who you really are and who you're not, based on others' reactions. So I started off, I was adopted out of Chicago and I was brought into a beautiful family. And as I mentioned, I would start to get visions when I was a little girl in my dreams of places like, we were going, for instance, with my mom one time. And we get there and she's like, what is going on? This is exactly what you've been telling me all the way here. And she froze and she would get scared. And I interpreted that as it being not good. Don't talk about these kinds of things. And so my intuitive story from that moment began, to kind of get pushed down. And in her defense, that would be a little creepy sometimes. Like, oh my gosh, my child just did what? And so, but then the years went by and it got a little tricky in my house. There was alcoholism there for sure, and mental health issues as well with my adopted family. But they meant well. It was just the struggle of their own trauma and their life. But I could no longer take it. So I moved out quite young, right after high school, 17 years old. And I started to go out into the world, into Chicago, where I lived, and started working in the city, got into the financial industry. I was a flight attendant for a while for Midway Airlines, and I did the finances where I stayed for a while. But during that time, my health was having a hard time because of, I didn't have much money. So the food choices I was making wasn't good at all. And, and I said, I got to help myself. And I'm pretty sensitive. So I couldn't go by the way that some of these doctors wanted to take me. So I went my own way and I dove into holistic organic foods in the early 90s. I was drawn to yoga. So I started my yoga journey then. I actually started when I was a little girl. My adopted mother and I would do it together, and she was pregnant with my brother. And so I think it always had that warmth in my heart. But then I really got into it, started getting massage, like all these things to heal me. And it just got so big on the inside that it started to pour over into my outer world. So I could no longer kind of be a broker anymore and any of that. And I said, you know what, it's time to go. And I left the comfort of the financial industry and I went into healing work in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I've never looked back.
That is awesome. And there's times that I really enjoyed the 90s, and then there's times that I'm like looking back now to the 90s, I'm like, we lived in hell.
Oh, right? Yeah. Yeah. It
The
was rough.
the programming and everything, the competition between like classmates in school, like who you thought you were your friends, or like not even your friends, or just like frenemies.
Frenemies.
Right. Yes. And I love that whole holistic aspect of everything. Now, the food too, right? Like, because you're saying you're getting more into holistic food. I don't even know if organic was a thing back in the 90s. I'm
Oh
trying
no.
to think. Yeah, I don't think so. It
No, no, no,
wasn't.
no, no. It wasn't. And the funny thing was, I decided in the 90s, here I am living downtown Chicago at the time, working in the financial industry, and I was married to somebody else. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to become a vegetarian. It was because of what I was reading, and my body just wanted it. I found this book called Eat Right for Your Blood Type. And I was learning a lot about holistic care as well. I was considering being a naturopath. I'm like, I'm going to do this because of the way that they treat the animals, not just the morality of it, but I had read at the time how they were injecting them with so many chemicals. I'm like, I can't have that. I don't want that. So this information was there in the 90s without the computers. So this information has been around for a long time. I just want to remind people. And even like traditional Chinese medicine, they teach you to eat certain ways with the seasons. But I could find the food nowhere. There was like one Whole Foods on the west side of the city that I would have to drive to. And when I wanted to be a vegetarian, my Catholic upbringing, most of the people in Chicago at the time, like, what? It's not Good Friday. Like, what do you mean you're not eating meat? Like, they couldn't. It took me like a half an hour to order a taco. It really did. I was like, no meat, just the beans and the rice and nothing, like crickets. They couldn't understand it. So it was pretty tricky.
Right, I can imagine, yeah. I mean, like, I was a weight loss consultant before for many years back in the day, back in like the early 2000s. And I remember I'm like, when you go to the restaurants, you are the one ordering. You get to go ahead and select what you want to have. So if you wanted to say, hey, don't add butter, don't add dressing, don't add this, you're allowed to. So we have to just use that voice to speak up for what our body wants because we don't want all that crap. At least I'm learning now. I'm learning that a little bit of a later later age, but it's better late than never,
Yes.
because our body, I'm being more in tune to my body now and I'm really listening to it. I'm just like, wow, that's incredible, the mind and body connection that we have. It's like, why didn't I know this stuff before? But it takes time to listen to that inner guidance, that voice that tells us, hey, maybe you should put that cookie down. It's not that good for you.
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
Oh, but we can definitely go on with the food thing, but I wanted to go ahead and ask you.
Yeah, I got them all brewing in here. I'm like, oh man, she touched on something good. But
I know you can go on with
I'll
everything because I
wait.
think we're all like we're both like into the whole like holistic body, mind, and spirit. So that's what I'm all about.
Completely.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So you also mentioned the importance of removing the veil from all things behind the veil. Could you actually elaborate on what this means and how you actually help your clients achieve this?
Yes. So to me, it's bottom line, it's aligning to your inner greater truth, more of like a vertical existence versus a horizontal existence. And I don't necessarily mean a vertical existence like being up in the clouds and not grounded. I mean like being feet in the ground, completely looking around you, but then really first and foremost locking in to what your inner truth is, kind of like how you mentioned before. Listening, what does your body want? What does it not want? Do you really want to go out with that friend that you promised you'd go for tea with like a couple weeks ago, or do you not want to? Are you questioning your environment in your workplace even though you need to make the money? Is it utterly unhealthy? Are you listening to the calls from in here? And when we start just listening to that inner truth, that is the removing of the veil. Because the veil is the conditioning that that is trying to tell us that what we sense first is wrong, that we need to listen to what everybody else tells us to do or to be before we listen to ourselves. To me, that is the ultimate veil, is the veil of conditioning.
Yes, I've noticed that a lot. And I think people have discovered their inner guidance, especially when we had that pause in 2020, where we get to do some self-reflection and decide, is this really the path that I want to continue on, or is this a path that I want to go ahead and dissolve so I can start doing things that I enjoy as a spiritual being and want to learn? And I'll give you some examples. I hated cooking before, so I thought. Because
Right. Oh,
as a female, right, we're supposed to
right.
hustle, grind, hustle, grind. Yeah, as a female, hustle, grind. What? Why?
Makes no sense, right?
Yeah, and now I enjoy cooking. I learned recipes. 'Cause my husband's Indian, so we
Oh,
got married in
oh,
2020 in February, right before COVID, before the shutdown. And so I wanted to learn how to cook for him, and I wanted to learn how to, be there for my kids more, do artsy stuff. And I'm like, I didn't know I was good at these things. I'm like, what? You'd be surprised. So I thank you so much for bringing that up. Yes, because we have to listen to the inner guidance. And in your opinion, don't you believe that it's like that's where self-love is? Once you start trusting yourself, that's like self-love, right?
that is completely it. Because imagine, like, if you are, say, like you and I were hanging out and we wanted to go, hang out and become friends and go for tea. And then you're like, okay, Jeannine, we'll go meet at 2 o'clock on this day. I'm like, great. And so we go there or you go there and I don't show up. I don't call, I don't text, nothing. You're like, all right, well, I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe something came up. And then later I tell you, oh my gosh, yeah, got away from me. And then I keep doing it. Would you trust me at all? Like you would say, oh my gosh, this is not a person I want to hang with. Like this is somebody I'm not having a relationship with her. And yet we do this to our bodies all the time.
Mhm.
Our bodies, I have this program, a concept, I should say, for my clients. I always say your bodies are your babies. And so, like our four bodies, our spiritual, our mental, our emotional, and our physical body. Do we have a favorite body? A least favorite? Do we have one that we pay attention to all the time, and maybe some others that we don't at all? And like you said, it is such an act of self-love to pause and to pay attention to all those aspects of who we are, to build trust, so then the body can show us more, it can do more for us. We're not just dragging it along saying, I don't care what you think, or yeah, I hear you, I'll get to you later, and then we never do. We don't rest. We don't ask if we're thirsty. We don't say, is this a right environment for us? None of that, right? So it is self-love. And when we vibrate that self-love, right, we can like share that with the world properly, for sure.
Yeah, I used to be a people pleaser all the time, and I was a yes, ma'am, yes, man to anybody. If they needed something done right away, okay, I'm right here for you, because I felt like I needed to please them or I needed their approval in order for me to be okay. And once I just discovered, like, oh no, Gina, you're doing it wrong. And this is why I love coaches. This is what I love what you do, is because I really feel like the coaches, at least mine as well, back in 2017. She helped me with my mindset. Like
Mm.
I really had to just take away all those limiting beliefs. I really had to deep dive and discover who I was as a spiritual being. And I really had to start trusting myself, like we are talking about, and doing things that I thought would be uncomfortable. Because I was always in my comfort zone. Like, oh, that's too much for me. I don't think I can do that. But you know what? Once you do it, you try it. Oh,
Oh,
you love it, and then you're like, "Oh, why didn't I do this before?"
it's total freedom. Did it feel like freedom when you
Very
finally?
liberating, very liberating. Yeah, I love
That's self-love. And then
it.
you're inviting others. Like Gina is the like the little crumbs, the poster child for, hey, if she could do it and she's ultimately free, then so can I. So good for
Oh,
you.
absolutely. That's what, so thank you, coaches, you too. Jeannine, thank you. I mean, myself too, I guess. I'm a coach as well, but I always think about other people.
Yeah.
Now, you actually use various tools such as astrology, traditional Chinese medicine, as well as yogic principles in your practice. How do you actually do these modalities? How do you interconnect them all, I should say, and inform the guidance you provide?
Well, I what I love most about all these things that I was so passionate about learning is that after you do them for a while, at least for me, I started to see the patterning within all of them. Like they all had these very similar threads, elemental, like just all these little pieces I won't get into now. But when I work with my clients, I'm an intuitive first. Like that's the part that came when I was a little girl, right? And I work on that very much so within myself as well, staying aligned and clean and just true to me. But when I'm working with my clients, I'll hear not only the intellectual messages that are important for them to get their mindset right, right? But to also help them get into the depth of the emotion, right? Like I know holistic practices and how to help them with that. And then also to sustain it. So then I loop that in with like different foods or herbs. I just hear it's like a bunch of tools in my head. And when I channel, it's all the tools that they need for all the different areas of their life, not just the insight.
That is so neat. Now, lately, I've been really tapping into my intuitive self and learning about the different gifts I have. And, I will hear, I actually heard an actual voice. I'm like, okay, we're coming this way
Oh,
now.
ooh,
Okay. Because before, I'd always say, like, people are like, oh, God talked to me this way, or someone told me this. And I'm like, are they really hearing this? But it wasn't like a conversation. It was just a guidance. And I had mentioned this on my podcast before because I didn't know what to get my sister or my mom for Christmas, or just a gift. I wouldn't say necessarily for Christmas, just a gift. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm in the massage business and we just had a new line of a product that came out that I really enjoyed and I really love because I bought some for myself. And then I remember waking up, using the restroom, going laying back down. My husband was kind of, I think he was asleep. And all of a sudden I heard like oils. Like that. I'm like, did you say something, honey? He's all no. I'm like, and I kind of got freaked out a little bit because
oh
I was
my
like,
goodness.
okay,
Yep.
I don't know if I'm
Yep.
ready for this. At least I'm aware of what it is because I was already in that state of mind. But I was like, oh, well, sure enough, I got them that. And they love it. So
Oh,
it's like it's so amazing, but I've never heard anything after that because I think maybe my spirit guides or whatever just was like, okay, maybe we need to
we
give
scared
her
her a
some
little.
space. Give her some space.
We'll give her a couple months and then we'll come back on in.
Right, right. But I said, okay, I'm open to it. But I'm just like, okay, I'm not there just yet. I don't think, but I maybe I am, but they think highly of me, more highly of me, I guess.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's exciting for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting. Now, the concept of past life root trauma discovery and ancestral healing is something I actually have been learning about myself. Can you actually share how these aspects are crucial in someone's healing journey and maybe perhaps give an example of a transformation you've actually witnessed?
Absolutely. I would love to. This is one of my top favorite topics, and it's one of my specialties actually. I almost
Wow.
can't have a reading with somebody, no matter what type it is, without seeing a past life. Because for me, the past life is the root. So as I mentioned, it goes to the very, very, very bottom of all the dynamics. And we come in, we're all energy first. So when we just hold on to that concept, then we can understand the rest. So if we come in and we're all energy first and we land in a family lineage, the family has a vibe, it has a frequency. And all of our past lives, the traumas and the masteries, they have a vibe too. So when we come together, they match one another in that way. And so when I'm doing the work for somebody, and I have a couple programs. I have a mentoring program I've named Into the Mystic. I've been doing that for about 6 or 7 years. But I've been also, I do this like peppered in throughout all my work as well. And when I want to go deep, they'll say, gosh, these dynamics are just on repeat, like we don't get it, what's going on. I'm like, all right, let's go find it. So I go into the chakra, and I have a special way that I do it, into the specific chakras. I go into all of them and I find the initial wound. Because to me, there's a turning point initial wound. And I work with that really specifically and in a certain way. And when I work with it, we release it because the witness is the medicine. So it isn't just that I see it, although that's a big piece of it, but then I teach my clients how to work with that outside of our room. Because
Mhm.
once that past life is over, we're meant to kind of like go there again a little bit to reactivate it. So then we could move beyond it and integrate, because running away from a problem or a dynamic doesn't integrate it, because that which we resist persists, right? Lifetimes in the making. So I'll give you an example. This one's pretty intense. Are you okay if
Oh,
and I can just,
absolutely.
okay, okay, okay.
The more intense, the better.
Okay, good, good. I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
So I was teaching massage. This was in the early 2000s, and I was just first getting used to this gift that I have of like seeing past lives right away. And I was just working on one of the students, and she was in an intensive program, which they would come for like 4 weeks at a time and get their massage certification. They come from all over. And I'm working on her, and all of a sudden, I get a flash of a past life. And I see her hanging from a tree. I could hear they had hung her. I saw all these people, and I remember, and I could see it now, looking up at her dress, and she had a black sackcloth dress on, and she had black tights, like thick tights. And it was cloudy, and I remember the smells and the sound of the rope on the tree, and I hear the people, and they're all yelling, and I see their hands. And so I saw that they would call her a witch or just somebody who was different. They were afraid of the gifts that she brought, and they had hung her and killed her. And so I see this all in a flash, and I just kind of back off a little. And she's like, Jeannine, what happened? I'm like, nothing. And she's like, tell me what you saw. You saw something, I know you did. And I was really afraid to tell her because it was so intense. And, again, when we work with past lives, it's, you gotta, not just what the people say, but is their soul ready to digest that? Like, to me, you gotta walk gently. You gotta walk gently. And plus, she was a student. So I didn't want to get in trouble. Like, I was so afraid of so many things. So I didn't say anything. So she came up to me a couple days later. Okay, you have to tell me. I'm like, fine, I'll tell you. And so I went in and gently, and I told her the story. And then she just froze and started crying and walked away. And I'm like, uh-oh, there it is. I shouldn't have done it. I was so worried. And I saw her after our weekend break, and she came back with a bunch of pictures. And she's like, I got to show you something. I said, all right. So we went outside, and her pictures are there. And she says, I almost didn't make it to this training. I said, okay. She said, I was supposed to come to the training you guys had in the fall. This was the spring. And my husband at the time, her now ex-husband, did not want her to go become a healer. Like, this is late 90s, early 2000s. And he was very violent. And he put her in the hospital from having choked her so bad. Her eyes had bulged, and she showed me pictures and everything of like being in the hospital and how she almost didn't survive, but she was able to break free from him and run and somehow or another get away. And now they're divorced, and she's doing her thing. And so right then, this flood of information came in that said, she crossed over that similar threshold, but she wasn't supposed to end up the way she did last time. She was supposed to break free from it. Because not only did she come in with similar trauma, but she came in with other strengths and masteries that took her beyond that. It's like stretching beyond, what you're capable of stretching. And in yoga, you want to go farther. And so she's like, when you told me that story, she goes, it relieved me because I thought something was wrong with me, that I had chosen this man, that I didn't know what I was getting into. And she goes, there were signs along the way I could have left him earlier, and I didn't. She's like, but I see now that it was a karmic event, that I needed to butt up against it and choose a way. And so it like completely relieved her of the shame and the guilt when she realized that it was a story that she had to go through. Now, in no way am I saying that we got to stay with people who are violent. I'm not saying that at all. She did say that she saw a few other openings prior where she could have exited, but it came to this point again, but she broke free, and now it was over. That karmic story was done.
Wow. So you actually were the change to, because you brought awareness to her. So if it wasn't for you, who knows what would happen? I always say like, wow, that's why there's some people that come into our lives for a reason. I even say, I say everyone's my spiritual teacher. Everyone that I'm encountering, everyone that I'm experiencing things with, they're all my spiritual teachers. I'm learning something, even if it's like a bad experience. Like, I'm still learning something.
Oh
I
my
have
gosh, I
to.
love that. I love that. And Ram Dass had this saying. He said, just imagine everyone is God in drag. Oh my God, I love it. Like if I'm having a bad day or something, I'm like, I love that. Thanks, Ram Dass.
That's hilarious. But yeah, we're all, I mean, they're spiritual beings. We're all collective. We're all part of a collective consciousness here. And so I'm glad that we're finally come to a place where people are opening up, having their spiritual awakenings and different ways to, like mine was really having that pause, like I said, in 2020. Well, first I would say my mentor back in 2017, and then me opening up, like I didn't always have to believe what my mind is telling me. I
Right.
don't always have to do what Jack and Jill said for me to do, and just learning about me. And then once I started learning about me, then I started like researching things about the world, about outer space, about this, that. So, and it goes like the more I'm learning, the more I'm like, oh my gosh, there is so much you do not know.
Well, okay, so you're touching on a topic now that I want to speak to your courage for a moment, if you don't mind,
Yeah, yeah,
because
please.
it's Adyashanti has a book called The End of Your World, and I'm not going to serve his quote properly, but it says something like enlightenment is a destructive process. It's a
Mm.
stripping away of all that we believe to be true. Again, he says it way better. I know I paraphrase that, but a lot of people, and tell me what you think about this, like when they say, "Oh, you're spiritual, then you must know all these great answers and you must never get sick and things don't happen to you." And like spirituality is daisies and unicorns and kumbaya, and I like, yeah, it is sometimes, but actually it's it's the it's the breaking down of the conditioning. So if you want to, let's say for instance, a nice new kitchen, is you're going to live in the backyard on a grill for a couple of weeks until that kitchen's done. And so when you do start leaning into your truth, things might start shifting around you. And then, like you're like, well, if that isn't true, then what about this? And what about that? And so, again, you start to get vertically oriented instead of horizontal, where it's easy to cling to what's popular or what's, really kind of like, well, they're doing that. That's trendy. I'm going to do that. So my primal brain feels comfortable enough to fit in. It's scary, right? So
Oh
kudos to
yeah.
you. The courage. Let's speak about that. Like to have the courage to be different.
It was dark.
Dark,
I'm gonna be straight up
dark.
honest.
Oh no, no, no.
I
Right?
was
Yeah.
alone. I was
Yes.
sad. I was crying every night. I'm like, why doesn't anyone understand me? No, why can't they see what I see? Especially in my marriage, and now it's getting better. It's getting better now. He's opening up a little bit. He's seeing, because you know what? We watch movies and like, that is a true story.
You're like, see that? See that, honey?
So I'm
You
going
got
to
your
get
little
this.
I told you so t-shirt on. You're like, you got your little I told you so.
He thought, I'm going to get the commentary whether I like it or not, and he laughs about it.
Oh,
I said,
that's
of course you are.
awesome.
Of course you are. But I've come to a place where I'm just like, you know what? Wow. And I've chosen this time to live, it's like amazing. Now I get it. It's like, wow, I get it. Like, and all the puzzles that were all like thousand millions of pieces are all coming together to build this beautiful picture that I now can see outward, that it's actually not as bad as we think it is, even though at first it's very ugly.
At first, it's very ugly. The way I like to say it is, imagine it's like, us girls when we go get a facial. I don't know about you, but they're picking your face and like, zits and it's gross and everything. You come out, but then when it's all done, you look so good. So at first it's really gross and it's really hard, but if you hang tight and just continue to still trust your truth, then it you'll start to like align with just the right people, right?
Yeah, so you remind me, I recently, because I work at the spa, and so we just try different vendors that come, and we try their products. And I'm not an esthetician, I'm a massage therapist also. And one of the estheticians came and she did this hydrofacial, and then it was like these suction cup things. I was like, what the
Yes.
heck is she doing? I felt like my face was getting sucked, 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 sucked. But then I looked at all of the dirt that was
Look.
in the vial or in that thing. I was like, whoa, nasty. But then afterward, my skin was like, oh, it was like all glowing and beautiful. I'm like, wow, yeah, I needed one. Actually, I needed that facial. So
That's when you
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, and I feel like the world's getting a big old facial right now. So
Oh yeah,
that's the gross
definitely.
stuff. That's the gross stuff. But we'll work through it. We'll be grown.
Yeah. And because we're teaching our kids too. At least I'm teaching my
Mhm.
children, like, hey, these textbooks, I don't know.
Oh no, I've been life learning my kids for 17 years. Life learning for 17 years. So I feel
Wow.
you, like the backlash, friends, family. I've lost so many friends and family. And all I can say is maybe thank God for the red hair, because there's a part of me that just doesn't care. And there's the other part of me that my feelings get hurt, but I keep working
Yeah.
ahead because people look at that and they're like, life learning. And I said, well, why don't they teach in school on how to listen to your body first, or how the certain foods affect your mood, your mental health, and your well-being? Or maybe why don't they teach how to communicate to each other our emotional needs? Like there's so many other important things that are fundamental to me. I mean, don't get me wrong, reading, writing, and math, you
Oh
could
yeah.
learn that in heartbeats. I mean, that okay, great. But what about this that
Hmm.
contains all that? I mean, that's why so many people are, that's why the people I see, they're like, I did all the things. I went to all the schools. I got all the degrees. And no way am I saying schools, but I love learning. But it's learning from, once you're aligned with who you know yourself to be, versus I'm going to tell you who you are and this is what you're going to learn. And it's half of it's not even true. So what is
Right.
it? It's a waste of life force that nobody should be put through.
Right. And that's why I encouraged my son, he's 8, right? And he's loved the giant squid since I read this little book to him, and he was maybe 2 years old, and he was so fascinated by that big eye.
Oh, that's
The big
really
eye. And he's so cute because to this day, it's all about the giant squid. And he probably can hear me right now talking about the giant squid. He's probably like
fun.
I can just imagine, I can see
His little
his eyes
face.
light up right now, like a giant squid. Because
Oh,
he's playing right now with his giant squids, and he likes to create movies in his mind. And he films it sometimes too with my stepson.
fantastic.
Oh, it's
Yes.
great. So I always say, whatever the child's passion is, of course, the reading, the writing, the math, basic math, and whatever you need to get through to in
Right.
society, but
Right.
then really get a mentor and deep dive into that giant
Mm.
squid marine biology and learn and be your passion and just learn
Yes.
about everything about it.
I love that. And then there's that difference between memorization and remembering.
Yeah.
And when it is passion led, you cannot forget it. But if you're being forced to cram down information just to regurgitate it, I mean, come on, they have the TV show, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? It's because the fifth graders, it's fresh in their regurgitation
Yeah.
process. It's the taste is still in the mouth. Where the other people, it doesn't stick because they weren't passionate about it. But when you're
Right.
passionate about it, he will learn that squid stuff, and that will affect him in great ways for the rest of his days.
Yes. Oh, I just love children. So yeah, he's just all about the giant squid. I know I used to watch that. Are you smarter than a fifth grader? And I was like, oh man, this is old condition, Gina. Like,
Yeah,
oh man, these parents aren't smart. That's what I was thinking.
it's hilarious. No, I mean, we could go down that rabbit hole. We won't, but
Oh,
it's
there's so
so
many rabbit
true.
holes to go down. Oh my
Wow.
goodness.
I'm with you though. I feel you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you mentioned in your feature in the book becoming psychic, because like I told you before, I'm learning more about like my abilities because we all have them. We all have them.
We do. We're the canaries in the coal mine, right? That's
Yeah,
that's all this is a canary in the coal mine. We all have.
exactly. Yeah. And then could you actually share a key lesson or insight from your contribution to this work that listeners might find like particularly impactful for
Absolutely.
themselves? Yeah.
Actually, Dr. Tarrant and I, Dr. Jeffrey Tarrant, he's the one who wrote the book Becoming Psychic: Lessons from the Minds of Healers, Mediums, and Psychics. And him and I have been working together for a few years on some projects, and we're having a retreat March 8th, 9th, and 10th in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And what we're doing is it's called Becoming Psychic, Bridging the Gap Between Science and Spirituality. And so, what Jeff and I do well together is Jeff measures, he scans the brains of people when they go into a reading state. And he hasn't just worked with me, he's worked with other psychics as well for many years. Like he's devoted his life to this. And he is, he could find places in the brain that happen like during meditation or psychedelic experiences that also happen to like me when I'm reading, or other psychics when we're reading, and we're not doing psychedelics. We're not really in meditation, we're in a reading space. So he's like, that's interesting. And he's got all the words. Like he knows how to describe this different states, the theta state, the beta state. And he's like, I see patterns in psychics. They use this part of the brain. Like for me, the language part, he says, shuts off, even though I'm speaking and channeling. Like that goes quiet while the other stuff gets loud. So what I'm getting at is, you know, when we could put a finger on it, it's not so scary. And this is my passion, is to teach people it's not scary. It's all of us are capable. It's just an exercise. It's an exercise to do it. And so just trusting that you do have the ability, and then sustaining it by continuously just trusting wherever that takes you, is going to strengthen your psychic ability in your own brain.
Yeah.
That capacity where it sits.
It takes practice, huh? It's a matter of
It's
practice.
tuning the instrument. I call it tuning the instrument. So you could have a great piece of music, you could have an awesome instrument, but if you don't tune it or practice, so it's really consistency. So that's would be the takeaway, is just practice the trusting of your empty daily.
Yes, that's what I'm going to be doing. Yes, building that muscle or tuning that instrument. Yes, yes, need to do that.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I know you were talking about your mentoring program, but I wanted to ask you, is Into the Mystic, right?
Yes.
Into the
Yes.
Mystic, and I'm
Mhm.
sure it's been impactful to in many, 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 many ways. It's like your baby, you know.
It is my baby. It is so. I have a birth chart. I have an actual birth chart of when I launched it. So she is my
Oh,
baby.
that is awesome. Yeah. So what are the core principles of this program, and what transformation do you typically see in your clients or in overall?
The principles are to dissolve trauma and access masteries. And when I say to dissolve the trauma, it is really at that fundamental root core level. So again, I go into the chakras, but I seek out the past lives where the initial wound began. I bring it up, and we share it, we go over it, we integrate it. And then whenever now, then people move away from that first aspect, which is clearing the container, I call it. And then they move into part two, which is embodying empty of Into the Mystic. We work on how they could start to really consciously say, oh, wait, that past life is showing up here today, but I'm different. So I don't have to jump into that dynamic all over again. I could honor it, I could acknowledge it, but I get to know that it's over now. So how can I remove myself a little bit from that dynamic? Just a little, just to get some space and empowerment. And so I have, people work with this, and my gosh, it heals so much for them, just the capturing of these past lives. It's crazy how so many of their stories, they'll give me specifics on how they actually happened in this life as well. But now that they could see it at a distance, and they know that they're the medicine, they're not still in it, they get such a handle on the issues, and they just feel completely empowered, and like they know how to navigate now when, maybe some of the momentum or the echoes of those dynamics continue to show up. They just feel empowered. It's great.
It's life
Life
changing.
change.
Life
Yeah,
changing for sure.
I love it.
Yes. No, if since our listeners are probably all inspired by now, and they're like, yes, I want to learn more about my intuition. I want to learn more about my spiritual being. How can they go ahead and contact you or connect with you?
JeannineKim.com is the best way. I'm just now getting into Instagram. It's been a rocky couple months. I'm coming out of the cave. And so I'm also at the mystic.JeannineKim, but just go to my website. All my goodies are there for sure.
Although, yeah, so website's always best because then it has like the social links there and all the
Yes, I love that. Yeah,
all the
exactly.
information. That's
Right.
awesome. Well, Jeannine, it's been a pleasure having you on my show. Is there anything else you would like to share or any final or last words?
I'm feeling now that one of my all-time favorite quotes, I want to say it's Yeats, but it says, "The world is full of magical things patiently waiting for our wits to grow sharper. So it's all there. It's just come home to you, listen to you, feel the subtleties, and then you'll be able to feel all these other great messages that are coming your way. And just trust you first and foremost.
Absolutely. I love that. Oh, well, thank you so much, Jeannine. It's been an honor having you on my show today.
Welcome. Thanks for having me, Gina. You're so uplifting and it's beautiful. It was fun. I love
Oh,
it.
thank you.